Life can happen at an alarming rate. Just when you think you have it all figured out, something really unexpected happens. There you are, going about your day, and then you get a phone call, you hear some news, or maybe you experience something so traumatic that you'll never be the same. It's during these times you have an option on how you will respond. While you may want to just curl up in a ball or just shut the world out, these are the times where you really need to apply the lessons of resilience that you've learned throughout the years. Join me as I journey through grief, gratitude, and growth, and as I reflect and share the lessons that I learned from the greatest role model that I know, my mother, Germaine Riley. I am Victor Reynolds, and this is Ma Riley's Resilience. Today is my mother, Mrs. Germaine Riley, 59th birthday. Well, at least it should have been. I should be on my way up to Vacaville, California with my beautiful wife, my amazing kids. Also, we can celebrate my mother on her birthday. But this year, I can't do that. A little less than a year ago, 282 days ago to be exact, my mother was murdered in her own home. The very home that we would be driving up to right now to celebrate her wonderful day. Obviously, a sudden and tragic death like that shakes you and your family to the core. I remember right after it happened, I tried to pretend like it didn't happen, like it was something was wrong with everybody else, and my mom was fine. I even remember I was actually finishing with a workout, and I tried to go back to the workout just to forget about it. The days, the weeks, the months after that, I went flip-flop between trying to act like everything is normal, everything is fine, I'm strong, I'm good, to isolating myself, giving myself a lot of distractions and instant gratification. Everything around me started to crumble because I basically went from a very productive and energetic person to a moody and just negative, just being that it's hard to describe, that I was bringing the mood around me just down 2 or 3 notches. And it was tough because now I am not even honoring the commitments I had to myself, to my career, to my family, to my friends, to my basketball program. I was on a path of self-destruction. And if it wasn't until I had a couple of very difficult conversations with myself in these dark times that helped me understand that I wasn't being the person that I could be. I wasn't the person that was in that mode of creativity and joy and a confidence that I can just do anything I set my mind to. And I was actually acting like the opposite. And because of that, I knew that if I continued doing what I was doing now, that all the things that I was working for would be gone. All the lessons that I've taught myself, or I thought that I taught myself, would be for nothing. And as I was thinking about all these different things, I realized that a lot of the lessons I have learned, they came from my mother. Many were deliberate lessons where she would sit me down and lecture. Others were a little bit more, I guess, indirect, where I would watch and take her lead or just kind of see how she would approach things. And there were times where she did things that maybe I wouldn't have done in her situation. But either way, the person I was acting like through my grief and my pain was not the person my mother raised me to be. And that's when I realized it was time for me to get back to that person. All the things I've been through, from writing a book to changing careers abruptly from being a software engineer all the way to a totally different field that gave me a lot more fulfillment and joy. I thought I was getting prepared for just a different lifestyle change. But all of those things, including the things my mother taught me, were all to help me in times of darkness and fear and sadness that I was going through. So when I first decided to make this podcast, I was just going to keep it very business-like, like, oh, this is what you do when you're out of money and you're out of options and you can make it. But let's be honest, that's not really going to help you. And honestly, it's not going to help me. I know you can't, talk back to me. I mean, you can in the comments, but there's a lot of healing that needs to go on, not just from what happened, but just other things around the death and the different things that I found out since then. So with your permission, I want you to come with me on this journey as we explore the different lessons my mother imparted me and my family with to help me become the person I want to be. And hopefully you find some inspiration to be the person that you want to be as well. Because the first lesson that I really want to impart with you that I'm really taking to heart now is it all these lessons that came from mother, like they all started from her sacrifices, her commitment to greatness for herself and her family. And that's the type of resilience we all need, a commitment to greatness to yourself and to those that you love and care about. So let me give you a little background about my mother before I go on a little deeper. So I'm the oldest of 5 kids, but my mother, she had me when she was relatively young, 19 or 20 years old or so. Now, her and my father got divorced maybe about a year, 2 years after they'd been married. I was about 3 years old or so. And later on, I got my mother had more children. My sister Taryn, 3 years younger than me. She met my stepfather, William Riley, where she gets the last name from, and had my other sister Mia, and then my brother Devin, and then my brother Shane. So total of 5 of us. Honestly, this would have been their 30th year anniversary of their marriage if she was still with us. Well, grew up in San Francisco. My mother moved when she met my stepfather when I was about 5 or 6 years old. She moved us out of San Francisco, the project of San Francisco, to Fairfield, California, which is about 40, 50 miles northeast of San Francisco. And I was living there, as a kid for a couple of years. And my mother had a vision for me. And she knew that if I would stay out in the suburbs where I was, I probably would not be able to realize that potential. So she made the very tough decision to have me move back in with my grandmother back in San Francisco so I can start to attend private schools. I didn't know this until later, but she told me that she always had a vision for me, even as a kid, maybe even before I was even born. Some of the people that she would kind of run across or just kind of see out in passing, how they carried themselves and how they conducted business, these are, her peers, so to speak. She always had that vision that her son would do those things, would go to those schools, would be that type of person. And she made the very tough decision to have me move in with my grandmother. Now, during this time, again, we grew up in a project, so, you can't be soft out there in the streets. And my mom, she especially as a young mother, she was, kind of tough on me on times. Other times it was for my own benefit. And as a young kid, sometimes you misconstrue that with maybe not caring, or because my mother didn't act like the mothers on TV would act, or some of the peers that I had in the suburbs would act. Maybe she didn't care as much, or the way she cared was different. But I remember very clearly the day that we were to part so I can move back to San Francisco to be with my grandmother, who I love very much, by the way, so it wasn't a bad thing in that regard. The tears coming down her face, and I remember thinking like I was mistaken about how much my mother loved me. I was 8 years old when that happened. I'm 38 now, so 30 years ago. And it wasn't until I started to reflect on my life that I started to see the strength that it took to actually go for your vision so hard that you have to give up your own child so he can have a better life, so he can actually live a life of purpose, a life of design, and not by default. So even when I was 8, I was able to see like, wow, she does love me. Like, it's silly to say that as a boy, but I didn't realize what she was trying to do then that I understand now. And having my own kids, I know how difficult it could be to actually give up your child so they can make sure they can be the best that they can be. This is the first time I've really seen any real emotion from my mom that wasn't the typical joy, sadness, anger, etc. And it shook me. That's why till this day, I'll never forget that moment. Like, I can relive it. That's why I'm getting a little emotional with you now. But seeing how it was probably one of the hardest things she ever had to do, it was just another lesson. And that lesson is, strength is often being the softest piece of a hard situation. I want that to sink in a little bit, because even after that point, I always thought that being strong was not showing your emotion and not crying, because she gave me a hard time about, crying, especially early on in my life, and being stoic and all these other things that in reality has nothing to do with strength. Those are characteristics that maybe aid in strength, maybe they don't, but just because you're not showing emotion doesn't mean you're dealing with it properly. Just because you're not showing any emotion doesn't mean that you're processing or you're fully living life. It could mean you're running away. It could mean you're avoiding. It could mean that you're seeking distraction the way I was when she passed. And that's when I realized that's what real strength is, having the strength to actually express yourself and show that emotion, not just for the hell of it, but because you are actually looking to live life to its fullest, and to help yourself and your loved ones live life in the best terms possible. And you can't do that by running from your emotions, from hiding from it, from denying it. Being strong enough to look someone in the face to admit when you made a mistake, or when you are looking at yourself in the mirror to realize that you deserve more, you deserve better, is kind of how I got to myself in that transition from career. But seeing how deep this goes, and just thinking about some of the things that my mother went through with me, with my family, my siblings, it, thinking back, it just kind of hurts a little bit that I couldn't show that gratitude in a way that she would appreciate. I'm sure she's looking down on me as I make this episode, and I'm pretty sure she's proud, but a selfish part of me wants to be able to show her, and I want to be able to see her face as I come to these realizations, you know, getting on with it. I lived with my grandmother for most of my life in San Francisco, and one of the schools that my mom really wanted me to go to was St. Ignatius High School, and in San Francisco. And St. Ignatius High School was one of the top schools in the area, maybe even one of the top schools in the country. Since she had that vision for me since I was a kid, to have me go to that school to help me be what I could be, it was actually kind of serendipitous that I didn't actually want to go to the school. I didn't know about this vision thing until much later. And I remember I applied to the school, and I applied to a couple of other private schools. And because of my athletic background, and my grades weren't terrible, but they weren't great, I got into pretty much all of them. And when I decided to go to what would have been my rival school, my mom was like, "No, you're going to go to this school." And at the time, I thought she was just being stubborn, and I thought she was just not letting me live my life. But when I had to go to summer school to kind of fulfill my requirements to get into the school, and I didn't make it in, I resigned myself, like, oh, I guess I'm just not good enough. I guess that this is it for me. I'll just move back in with my mother, go to a regular high school, and have a regular life. Hey, well, maybe I'll be the star of the smaller basketball team. Maybe there'll be a silver lining out of this. But my mom fought tooth and nail to get me back into that school, and she succeeded. Now, I was a little upset that I wouldn't be able to live with my mom through my high school years, but I'm so glad she fought for me. She bet on me because she saw something within me that I didn't see within myself. Later on, I would have to bet on myself for the same reason. But during that time, that school changed me because I met my best friends there. A lot of the lessons I've learned, just and what I'm able to accomplish and to achieve, I learned at that school, all because she had a vision of me. And when it was time to go to college, she kind of helped me choose my college. And again, I met some more lifelong friends and my wife from school. Granted, I didn't stay at that school, but that's a different story. So the point is, she never let any outside circumstances dictate my life or which moves I would make. And there were times in her life where she would have to apply the same lessons. Again, as a kid, you don't see them, you don't realize that. And as I think back about my mother and all the things that I've learned from her, all of these things that just kind of slapped me in the face. And I feel that I wish I can tell her how grateful I am that she is my mother, and all the things that she showed me, and all the things that she instilled with me, even without me even realizing it. So all that I've accomplished, and all the things that I've achieved, is all a direct result of my mother teaching me to be resilient, and more resilient through just her example, through her sacrifices, through just the things that she would actually sit down and tell me that I may not have understood at the time. But going through her death, this change with my family, my friends, I'm really starting to truly understand what she was trying to get at all those years ago. So here's the thing. When you really want to, or when you really test your resilience, whether you want to test it or you're just practicing it, it's not just getting up when life knocks you down. It's not just keeping a smile on your face when things are not going great, right? I mean, sure, that's part of it, but it's not the outside. It's the inside. It's going back in and digging deep and learning the lessons that life just handed you, and then not giving up and trying to apply what you learned so you can go forward. It's giving those lessons back to others who may be going through something similar, or who may go through something similar in the future. It's trying to quickly understand how you can find your lane in this world or in this situation so you can actually thrive in it, and not just be a victim to circumstance or a victim to just life in general. And just a way to kind of value yourself and your own life experience, that's where the resilience comes from, knowing that this too shall pass. So listen, as I said, I know this isn't something that you can speak back to me and offer any type of encouragement or anything like that. And I don't necessarily need you to do that, but I would appreciate if you guys in the comments would actually talk about, what do you think resilience is? And maybe areas in your life where you showed resilience. And maybe those areas of life is not something that you actually realized you showed how tough and resilient you are, because maybe on the outside you acted a certain way that others deemed wasn't proper or the right way to handle it. But the fact that you didn't give up, the fact that you actually, learned the lesson, the fact that you kept moving forward, the fact that you're still here, you're still thriving, you're still kicking, you're still trying to figure this out. That's the resilience I want to hear about, because I think we're all stronger than we realize, but sometimes we need somebody like my mother to point it out to us. Well, I want to thank you for listening to The Roots of Resilience. This is going to be the first of many lessons from my mother, Germaine Riley. And what I'm going to do is together, I want us to unpack all of these lessons and help you understand certain things as I heal, as my family heals, and walk through her life and her tragic death as we sort through all the wisdom and the fun times, the happy times, and any other lessons that we can come up along the way. And find that inspiration to help us, even when things aren't looking great, to keep moving forward, not just in a way that's minimal, but in a way that's actually taking us where we want to go. And I hope you find what you need from Ma Riley's resilience, like I have, and I continue to do so. So this journey is never ending, and you're never alone in this journey. So I'm going to see you next week. Mom, I got you a plant. It's your favorite color. So hopefully you'll like it. Happy birthday, Mom. Love you. And I'll see you back next week.